Hello and welcome back to another Institute Weekly Review. Mason and Tyler bringing you three more articles. Today we're covering Iowa Technical College denies labor trafficking allegations. The U.S. Army is prioritizing kamikaze drones. And finally we'll wrap up with North Korean weapons found in Ukraine. So I'll throw it on over to you, Tyler, for this first article.
All right. So what you're looking at here is the campus of WIT. Can't remember what the hell that stands for, but whatever, it's in Iowa, and it's a technical community college. Basically, the gist of what happened in about 2019 is they brought over 13 foreign students on what's called the J1 visa. The J1 visa program is supposed to be a cultural exchange program that also usually has some sort of tie-in where we teach them some sort of process. And basically, they brought them in on these J1 visa programs, and they were supposed to be sponsored by a local company. The students are from Chile and I want to say Brazil.
Yeah.
But the allegation here is that the students say that they were basically just exploited. And this is actually a long running issue with some of these J1 visa programs. People assert that while we say it's for cultural exchange and helping us to better our soft power, really we just use it in practice to get cheap labor where Americans don't want to work. And indeed, the allegation seems to support that because they claim that they were basically put in a program for robotics and then they just got put on assembly lines basically.
Yeah, making dog food, which is
Yeah.
far from robotics.
I mean, I guess actually this is a rare case where it's manufacturing that someone doesn't have to do because technically, I mean, it's dog food, right? It's not necessarily mandatory for us humans.
Yeah.
It's useful, but I mean, it's not like something, where it's like, oh, they're making stuff that goes into batteries that helps keep pacemakers going. But
Right. It's a non-essential, certainly.
so,
So,
it seems like to me that the Des Moines Register here is taking the position that this is true, that the students are being basically abused because they talk about how um, they paid money, the university did, in order to basically settle the stuff.
right, they paid a
That-
$3 million settlement, which,
Yeah.
in legal terms, they did not admit any guilt. They said it was a financial reason they settled, but
Yeah.
from the normal person's perspective, that you don't pay $3 million too often for something where there's not some shred of truth. Personally, that's of course, no guilt admitted, but it truly is insane that this is essentially modern day slavery, coming from an Iowa institution which is relatively close to home for the
Yeah.
United States Midwest.
And
It
I don't know.
oh go
The
ahead.
thing that I kind of thought for a second is, hey, look, this program is supposed to be for cultural exchange. So it's supposed to basically take our Western values and basically hope that people from the other country would go and take them and spread them around. But then I was kind of thinking critically, and I'm like, if you're getting workers, how much of a voice do they have to really spread your values? You know what I mean? Like, you'd want to bring over elites if you want to spread over your values.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You
Yeah.
want people who have the freedom to be able to go and express that. But if these guys were basically brought into our community college, let's be real, these are workers. They're not the elites of wherever they're from. Otherwise, they would have brought them to Princeton.
Right. Right. Based on the
So
fact that they were brought to America and then sent to work at a dog food factory, I don't know if that's necessarily the greatest foundation or place to learn the American values that we're trying to export. Um,
yeah, so to me, it seems clear that it is an exploitation because they were basically expecting to bring these guys over and then just essentially screw them over and then have them not really say anything, maybe because they're disenfranchised even where they're from.
right.
So I don't know. The argument to me that it's purely for cultural exchange doesn't really seem to hold up too tight. It seems like maybe this is a really egregious case where the State Department had to step in and be like, okay, crap.
Right.
But it seems like they must be okay with this because otherwise, then they wouldn't have approved workers coming over. You know what I mean? They would approve people with the power to spread the.
Absolutely. And they even tried with the way they advertised this program. It was advertised as a program where your transportation would be paid for, your food and housing would be paid for, your schooling would be paid for
Yeah.
on your internship, which was supposed to be in the field that you worked in. Clearly that's not the case working in a dog food processing plant. To me, that's a clear indication of the bait and switch. When you offer that full ride, you don't have to pay anything tactic. You're one kind of targeting the lower income on the
Yeah.
spectrum, and you're also, all of a sudden you have a huge power, power disadvantage for the actual immigrant, um, because they're here living housed and fed by the companies
Yeah.
that they're here to work for. Which it sounded like there were even some potentially human rights violations where they weren't getting fed, but that's kind of outside of the scope here. I will keep us moving,
Yep.
not to get too tied up, um, and throw it back over to you once again.
Okay. So what we're looking at here is this is a drone, a kamikaze drone, that is currently the leading drone that's used for the LASSO program. So what I'm going to talk about here is not just about this drone, but also about the program generally, and what I kind of learned about how defense contracting works. So this particular drone, its use case is basically like it's like a handheld thing, or I think it's like canister launched or something like that. But it's supposed to be really mobile. It's like a soldier level asset, kind of like a rifle. It's
Mm-hmm.
not for like a platoon. It's like just for one guy. And basically, you're supposed to throw it out, and then it will turn on, go to the sky, and it will loiter and look for something to hit. It looks like the army basically built this out to specifically go and take out tanks. And I actually believe that it mentioned in the article that these have been used in Ukraine.
Hmm.
Um, so, and a part of the argument for why they wanted more funding for this, and what I thought was really interesting here is, so this program is is more general than this actual artifact you're seeing here. So what they said they wanted to do is appropriate money from like other areas of their budget. This is the second time we've actually seen this on the show. There was a lab that I mentioned previously that basically internally funded a development project.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think this illustrates another cool thing about the American system where like the army goes, hey, look, the DoD as a whole gave me this money, but I'm going to, pull some money from over in this budget, this budget, this budget, because I think that this LASSO program, which they're using to target like tanks and stuff like that, will be
Mm-hmm.
super valuable. So they're basically self-funding it. Um,
Hmm. Is this
and, go ahead.
is this a shift in drone policy? The reason I ask that is when I think of drones in warfare, when I think of American drones, it's the classic Reaper, reusable, fires
Yes.
munitions, and then when I think of Iranian-made drones, it's the Shahid or whatever.
Yes. I
That
think, yes. So can I summarize what I think you're
yes,
saying?
yes,
So you're saying, are we getting towards drones that are basically attritable? Like we
yes.
just don't care? And the answer is yes. So there is a larger scale program that's called Replicator right now. And essentially, they want to just basically get a whole crap load of these things because they think, like for China, that they just want to basically just overwhelm people with swarms of these drones. They also see the success of the Shahid drones,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't remember if I told you this or it was just an article I read, but basically, Iran is like getting a lot of money proliferating their Shahid drones. So I wonder if this is basically like a way for the Department of Defense to say, "Hey, look, we're getting outcompeted in the
Oh.
market, so we want to fund this because we want to make sure that it's people getting it from us."
Right.
Um,
If people
yeah,
want to buy their one way drones, they buy them from Western powers and not Iran.
but I mean, Iran's probably going to outcompete us on the cost point. There's no way.
Oh, certainly. If
Yeah,
if they're developed or manufactured over there, labor pricing in Western countries for manufacturing is astronomically higher.
yeah. So I think that is a really good point, and I think that's something I didn't really think about for this, but you kind of helped me connect the dots there. So I think that will be something big to watch in the future to see if like maybe this uh, going towards attritable systems expendable ones. If we go towards that, that screws over the United States in the balance of power.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be really interesting to watch. Any other questions?
Yeah, it's a little scary. I'm not gonna lie. This is directly out of a Call of Duty game. Just seeing this and imagining swarms of them flying around. Um,
You know how
undoubtedly.
like in Call of Duty you can call down that missile and you can like watch it like go and strike something?
Oh yeah,
This thing has a similar thing that the soldiers use. So it literally is like that.
that's so scary. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna
you can
lie.
look it up. I didn't put it in this thing. I thought about doing it, but I've been doing a bunch of YouTube videos recently, like inserting them into this. So I didn't want to push the boundaries too much.
No, that's fair.
Well,
With
might
that,
as well get in the next one.
yeah, it is kind of loosely connected to that once again with missile. I know you mentioned the drones being used in Ukraine. Um, this is kind of an offshoot of that. A missile was fired into Ukraine that a weapons analyst looked at. You can see its picture in the top left here. To me, that doesn't look like anything special, but to them, it didn't look quite like any missile that Russia had used before up till that point in the war. And they had all the pieces collected, sent back to a central processing point, or a safe processing point in Kiev, and then spent a ton of time investigating and actually found a lot of indicators that this missile was actually developed out of North Korea. You can see 112 stamped on it, which indicates 2023 in the North Korean calendar, and some letters in the North Korean alphabet. In addition to that, there was some more advanced satellite investigative journalism mapping the actual ships that transported these from North Korean ports to Russia. But what's most interesting about this is actually inside of this missile was a plethora of Western chips and components, which North Korea, by all sanctions that are currently in place, should have no avenue to obtain. And it indicates that the supply lines are really quite mingled because some of the chips found in this rocket were manufactured as late as 2023. So these are not old chips that have kind of scrapped out of a warehouse that somehow found that these are fresh chips, freshly manufactured, finding their way somewhat in mass into North Korea to be manufactured into weapons, exported to Russia, and then fired back into Western powers' backyards.
Well, this is interesting, but the Russian missiles also have it too.
What was that?
You can find American semiconductors in like fairly recent ones in Russian missiles as well. So it's not
Yes.
just like surprising that's in North Korea. It seems like basically we make this cool ass technology and then like literally our enemies. And I think even Iran, I read a story where they had a telecommunications board, so something way more advanced, not just the chip, but like something that was an integration of a bunch of things together that
Mm-hmm.
looked like it was made by us.
It's really insane how leaky the bucket is. As someone who's worked very briefly in defense, and I know you have as well, with all of the regulations involved there, and all of the risk taken on by sharing those kind of things, that it's quite as prolific as it is. But it clearly shows, there's strong economics behind this. That these chips really are quite valuable.
Let me
That
challenge you real quick. How do you think we could turn this into a win? So like let's say that we can't control a supply line. How do we turn this into a dub?
Well, I think that if you have a leaky bucket, you can poison the well a little bit. I know America did this in the Korean War, where they would make machine gun belts of ammunition, and at a tiny rate, maybe one out of 1,000 bullets, they'd put ones that would actually cause the gun firing it to essentially destroy itself. And they had those get captured to kind of poison the enemy's weapon supply by sowing distrust in the weapons. I think that is kind of an avenue to leverage, of actually intentionally getting these chips, making it look like it's following the processes that are currently in place, and getting bad chips in place of these ones kind of funneled through our enemy's supply lines. I think that's probably the most exploitable way of using
I
this.
also
Oh, go
You
ahead.
could also like if the bucket is leaky, I didn't think about this, but we have like the advances with stuff like the AirTag now.
Yeah.
You might be able to just say, okay, screw it. We're gonna let for like a year these stuff just proliferate. We'll do it with like garbage ones, like you're saying, and then we'll just literally map it out. So I like if people are saying this is leaky, I feel like that might be a psyop because to me it seems like we could easily just track it.
Well, it's not so much that these are. I think the biggest differentiator that might not be taken into account is these are not missile chips per se. These are cell phone chips. These are just advanced processors from Western powers that are manufactured in the billions, sold to distributors in the millions, and it only takes a relatively small number to use for this application that it truly could be just falling through the cracks.
Yeah.
I what they say is the big problem is shell companies pop up, buy a small number of these chips as like pre-processing samples, and then before they're really investigated, they'll keep trying to go through the process of buying as many as they can to get to North Korea, but typically just kind of going with initial development. Send us a couple so we can see if we want to buy these. And they just keep popping up. It's kind of like a whack-a-mole game where every time you stomp one out, which they're being stomped out all the time, they just kind of like termites in an underground system that resurface over and over again. Because I assume there's just a strong economic incentive that until we're able to either close that economic incentive or have some kind of big brother monitoring system, I think it's almost an inevitability that these are gonna find their way outside of the places that we deem them allowable.
Mm. You're kind
That
of saying like, how would we stop them from like getting American wood? Essentially, it's like it's not worth it to really track it through all that stuff. So it's like screw it. Yeah, I guess it even gets at the worth thing because these are they're super high volume things. So if you try to, I don't know,
right. It even comes like
track
I've
it,
I've heard it. Sometimes it's when they get blocked off to buy the chip, they just buy the phone that the chip goes into, and then take them all apart, and throw the rest
yeah,
whole phone away. So you really have to. It can't just be don't ship these chips to North Korea. You have to monitor. So it's such a the walls of the bucket are so vast that trying to patch all the holes is
what are we good at sanctioning then? So like to me, it seems like if really we'd only be good at like really big things, and at which point it's like what's the point then? Because it's like you could easily make sure that someone doesn't get an F-35. That's
right.
super. That's like because they have to legit get it from the sole supplier. So you just tell that one supplier, don't do that. And if you catch them, then you freaking just steal all their money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it almost requires like a fire and brimstone, like
Yeah.
absolute zero tolerance, which I know is the case, but maybe make a little bit more of examples.
Maybe we uncovered an argument for why sanctions maybe just are not that good.
Right. I think there's definitely another aspect of not just allowing chips in, but the abilities, with the Western powers controlling a lot of the larger financial institutions. There's definitely some levers that sanctions can work, but I think we're kind of scratching at a much larger problem than we have time to cover today. But maybe we can find some stories in the future that dive into that. Do you have any final comments for today's?
Um, it's a it's a good week for defense this week, I guess. Kind of had a whole bunch of stuff related to that. There's a whole bunch of news this whole week. I saw like I wasn't bored at all. I have to do like a little news reel every day, and every day I was like, okay, this fire. One last comment I'll say is a new RTX CEO just dropped. By the way, there's going to be a new CEO at Raytheon or slash RTX. So it was pretty crazy this week. That's all I got.
Sounds good. Well, tune in next week. Maybe we'll have something to talk about about the new Raytheon CEO. Thanks, guys.